Hi, I'm Jenny Miller, and we're going to talk about different kind of ways to use chords and to play the keyboard depending on the type of song, whether it needs to be background fill or if you're doing any leads. So first we'll start off with just doing background fill. Normally we'll have, the background synth going, but I'm going to take that out just so you can hear really what we're doing on the keyboard. The most important thing with playing keys in a band setting is keep it simple. You don't want to be doing a lot of intricate things. We're not playing any Chopin or Beethoven here. So we're not trying to impress the other person in the guitar and go, let me see how many more notes I can do. We really want to just keep it really simple. And so in the left hand, usually I will play either a fifth or an octave. So if I'm going to be playing in the key of C, just so it's easy for y'all to see, my left hand will just do that, or it'll do an octave, maybe with a fifth in between, but I'll never do anything more. And then with my right hand, I usually only play 2 notes, 3 notes tops. So usually you don't want a whole lot of notes going on. So that time I did 3. So those just block chords. They're just kind of notes you need to do. Know that you're not going to play a lot of chords where you're just doing, or we call them root position chords. That will sound really monotonous after a while. So usually you want to play either a fifth or an octave in the left hand, and then just add a few extra notes just to fill in that chord. And sometimes you can add a little interest by adding, we call like the second of the chord, and that would be like in the key of C, you would add a D. It's kind of a suspension chord, and you just take out the third. So those are all sus chords. Sometimes you can do the 2 and the 3. And that sounds really nice, but don't do that too much because you don't want to take away from anything. And again, those are still just blocked chords, meaning we're not playing anything separately. Sometimes if you want to, depending on the song, you really want to be following what the drum is doing. And so you're listening for the bass and the toms and how they're feeling. So if you're going to be keeping something simple, if it's a pretty active song like left hand plays way less often than my right hand. So typically, your left hand, you don't want to play more than 2 times the measure. I would never do that unless it's asked to do it, driving, because usually you have the bass, and the bass is going to be what's driving everything. And you just want to set the keys, and sometimes it's best to even take out the left hand, and you want to only add the right hand. And it just depends on the song. If the band leader is saying, hey, it's sounding a little muddy, usually you probably want to take out the left hand or play less often. We call it like harmonic rhythm, meaning play not every beat. Maybe play twice a measure, just 1, 2, 3, 4, or on beats 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Whatever fits with the drums. And usually when you're listening to the recording of the song, you can hear that. Now, if we're playing a soft song and they want the piano to lead in, something like Oh My Soul Arise, you'll actually get to do a few more arpeggios. But again, keep the left hand really simple and do a few intricate things in the right hand. So Oh My Soul Arise is in 3 or 6/8, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, that still sounds really simple by itself, but remember, there's also going to be a pad going on, and most likely the acoustic is doing something. And so always be more sparse. It's like you don't want cake that's mostly icing. You want cake with a little bit of icing. So you really need to fill most of your things with just chords, because that's really what our purpose is. Now, if you were leading worship by yourself with just a keyboard, you would do a lot more things. But just know that we need to be really complementary to everyone else. Most of the time, guitar is going to be the one leading, and we need to be following what the drums are doing, not overpowering, because the piano itself can play all of the different octaves. We can get in the way of the bass, we can get in the way of the guitars, and even the drums. So we need to be really careful. So less is more when it comes to this. Now, if you're doing any leads, they want you to do a synth lead. I'm going to go ahead and switch over and make a synth sound. So sometimes you can use synths as chords if it's a really upbeat song. And if you're doing synth chords, you don't add anything else but except what's on the changes. Only play the changes. But if you're doing a melody, if there's a melody, depending on what the synth is, do you notice that there's lots of octaves even with that synth? That means one note at a time. Don't double the octaves, because most likely that just takes over everything. So you just want to play with one hand, whatever the melody is. And so that's what you'll do with synth. So typically with piano, we need to be complementary. And then if we are in the forefront, still keep it simple, because that's what really makes it beautiful. You can hear those changes if you're adding a second or adding some sus, that sort of things. If you play too much, it starts sounding like classical music or too jazzy or something like that. And that's not really going to fit the style of the music we play. So just be really aware of that, and always ask questions too. And be always willing to change the way you play depending on who you're playing with. Because maybe there's a guitarist that plays really simply, so maybe you need to add some more licks than you need to. And on the piano, you could add octave and play the riff. So just be aware of who's around you and who you're playing with, and that all the parts are working together. So, sounds great.